Hey, everybody, welcome to today's webinar with Sandler. We're talking about the power of mindfulness and how you can start to integrate that into your world, into business, into sales. And we've got a couple of experts on today that I'm so excited to facilitate this interview, you guys. If there were a fangirl for mindfulness and meditation, I have to tell you, I might be like the president of that fan club. So much so that people are like, oh my God, here she goes again. She's talking about this. Like it's almost to annoyance. And so I'll be excited to just be quiet, be curious, and throw it to our experts. So with us today is Oksana Esberard. Oksana has been working. You might have caught the podcast that she did with Brian. It was really well done. I happened to listen to that a few days ago. She is the Chief Energizer Officer of Satvami, and what she does is she brings mindfulness and meditation to the workplace. She teaches executives, professional salespeople from small businesses all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. She's also a best-selling author. Can't wait to hear about her book. And we've got Haley Haggerty, also known as Haley Aero to the many folks in the Sandler Network. And Haley is our resident accountability expert. She, has created the mini course. She has done all of these amazing talks with Hamish. So I can't wait to bring you to the table. So if you don't know Haley, she's on the Forbes Coaches Council. She's written articles for them. She's been a part of our membership, or our partnership, I should say, with Harvard, and some of the stuff that we've done to bring Sandler to light there. So she's going to have some really fun ways of tying in mindfulness with this accountability piece. So let's kick it off with Oksana. So my curiosity lies in, how the heck did you get to think of this thing of like, hey, mindfulness, let's bring it into the business world? How did that happen?
Well, it's actually happened out of my necessity because I am, with my background, mostly sales and hospitality business development professional, and my source of stress was in the work environment. However, I was distressing and using these holistic tools for my personal life outside of work time, which happened for many years before the aha moment came when I said, why don't I practice these tools at the source of stress and where I needed the most? And that's where I started to play with it and offered business meditation in the community in Florida, and it just took off from there.
What did you, in your own personal journey, because I feel like those are so powerful, right? Those stories are really what resonate and make us even better for our clients. What differences did you notice for yourself when you started to incorporate these mindfulness practices into your work life?
Well, the most noticeable right away is less stress. And as a result, there comes more focus, more productivity, creativity flows, is the ability to connect with others on a deeper level. And then you just enjoy your work more. You have more time and space to enjoy what you do versus going through the motion of day-to-day, busy, let's go activities of the business world.
Yeah, so my meditation teacher, I love her saying, she says, stress makes you sick, stupid, and slow, which for high achievers out there, we're like, wait, I don't want that. I do find, and I don't know if you find this too, Oksana, in your world, I'm coming to you from the Midwest. And, here I feel like it's catching on a little bit, but it's still a little out there for some folks. What do you find are some of the misconceptions or the reasons why people don't grab, the idea of mindfulness?
I think, well, first of all, the mindfulness movement has really pioneered from the time I started. And within even the last year, their awareness has become more and more. Thank you for all the publicity and research that's coming out and all the companies that are early adopters of this movement. Yet there's still misunderstanding from both the leaders, entrepreneurs, and the business professionals that mindfulness will slow you down, that it is a toll on your productivity because you're taking the time off to do something personal that is not work related, and therefore it's not encouraged or it's not a priority. Where in reality, the education piece, and that's where my work comes in, is to educate busy professionals on the benefits of mindfulness and also change the mindset that is an investment into your productivity. It is an investment onto the ROI for the business results that will follow if you start practicing it at work, because that's where the most benefit will find you as well.
Yeah, I have found that I think many of us suffer from pace addiction, and we just are addicted to the madness and almost feel like the busier we are, the more badge of honor we can wear of like, hey, look at me, I'm successful because I'm so dang busy, right? And when I've talked about this, in my fangirldom, I'm like, oh, I meditate twice a day. It's changed my life. I'm a better parent and wife, and I'm, better in my sales role. People will say, how do you have time to meditate twice a day? They almost look at it like I just told them I binge Netflix on a daily basis. So how have you helped people get over that fear factor of the I don't have enough time to get this done? Have you found some sort of magic bullet there?
Well, first is the exposure, and for professionals, not only knowing the concepts, because I think that there are a lot of awareness nowadays that mindfulness is beneficial, yet it is on the personal, practical level when you really start to feel the benefit, and therefore it's shifting from something that you have to do to a lifestyle. And then it's the accountability piece that Haley will be talking to us about. It is still a development of the habit. So whether you want to practice mindfulness, meditate, do physical activity, or eat better, it is a habit formation, and therefore the same rules apply, that you practice it and then you need to have accountability piece to it to be able to adapt it successfully over time.
Yeah, and I find when people just bear down and do it, that it can quickly become a non-negotiable, right? Because they're like, "Wow, I feel so much better afterwards, and I'm reaping the benefits here." That it would almost be as offensive as not putting deodorant on. It's sort of like you're never going to skip that. You're not going to be like, "Well, I didn't really have time. I was running late today." Same thing with that mindfulness practice. How do people? I feel like there's mindfulness is one of those terms that has so many definitions attached to it. So if you were to help simplify that for folks, how would you define it?
Well, I would like to define it in the sales context because, as you said, there's a lot of definition. In the very broad scope, mindfulness means awareness, is their ability and the skill to be present. In the
Mhm.
sales context, is our ability to stay present throughout the whole sales process. As versus if you are defining the sales process and you created a plan within the organization, or your sales department has a plan, usually we start to go through motions where we're just doing things for the sake of doing, but we're not altering, we're not being creative, and we usually check out. We start to automate in our brain because that's the brain function. For the energy saving, for this busy, to maintain ourselves busy, we need to stay productive, we need to stay and to save time, and therefore brain automatically starts to shortcut on where can I save on energy, and we start to just go through the motions. We start to send the same email without changing it to a specific personable message. We start to do the same cold call with the same monotone robotic voice. We meet with someone and we don't ask them personal questions anymore because we're so much on the agenda of that sales process. So mindfulness helps us to stay online as we are talking to people and as we are going through the same process. And the way I like to think about it is the check for the airplane. If they would just go and check out every time they check for the airplane, then there would be way more crashes, but they're staying present with each step, step by step. And that's what mindfulness trains us to do as a skill, because as I mentioned, naturally our brain wants to automate, it wants to skip and wants to go fast.
Mm-hmm. So it's the difference between reacting or like acting over and over and over again and developing a new result. Is that kind of what you see there? So
Yes.
if you're joining us, I'm Amy Woodall. I'm a Sandler trainer from Indianapolis, and we're talking to Oksana Esberard, and we'll get to Haley Haggerty here in a moment, and talking about how do you bring mindfulness into your business and specifically in the sales process. So pivoting into that sales conversation, what's the difference that you see? And I think you've hit on the topic a little bit, Oksana, but if I'm a sales manager and I'm looking at, hey, my folks on my team who are mindful versus those who are not, what's the differences in their behavior that I might be able to pick up on?
Usually it's higher engagement level, it's more personable approach and ability to connect and empathetically serve the clients or prospects or even between the colleagues. It's aliveness and it's more energy that comes with it. It's more calm and poised. There is certain level of magnitude that comes with people that practice mindfulness. They're just more on. And in reverse, the people that are not practicing these tools, they have harder time to concentrate and focus. They tend to scale to the automatic behavior and therefore they're less personable. They are usually easier distracted. And as a result, the energy exchange that we receive on people-to-people communication is lesser. It's less impactful. You're less memorable pretty much. People, if you're another salesperson in your client's menu, then they will remember you last versus someone who is engaged and focused and personable.
Yeah, I love that. It really goes back to what we talk about in Sandler, which is, people buy for their reasons, not yours. And if you're in a mindful state of curiosity, and I love that you use the word empathetic, or you're in a state of empathy where you can understand and dig into what their real challenges are, that's got to make an impact on the person that you're sitting across from. They're going to walk out feeling like, wow, that person really understands me and my problem, rather than, hey, this salesperson tried to sell me something that I don't need, right? So certainly I could see where that would stand out there. As people are listening, for the folks who have joined us on today's webinar, and they're thinking, okay, but there's so many resources out there, and how do I start to practice this? If you were to give one or two ways that people can start to integrate mindfulness into their day, what might that look like?
I usually start to bring awareness to three things that all of us have on day to day and the control. And there are different tools that can lead us to become aware of these three things. One is the awareness of your thoughts. And that is important for us to mitigate things that puts us into position of autopilot, like head trash and the thoughts that are self-diminishing or being self-absorbed. Being aware of your thoughts comes with things like journaling, meditation, body awareness. The second one is the awareness of your emotions and feelings. Emotion and feelings are not something that sells well in business, at least still up until now. It's a little touchy-feely, and therefore it's not that adapted. But that's exactly what makes us connect on a human level. And therefore, if we are aware and conscious about what emotional states our client is. For example, maybe they need our empathy right now, or maybe they need to hear a joke. Maybe they need us to be serious. So if we're attuned to another human being emotions as well as our own, then we'll be able to come across as empathetic. And the emotional awareness comes from labeling. I feel this way versus I'm too busy to even notice how I feel, or noticing, the body language and other changes in the mood and behaviors of our clients. We're not the same every day. And therefore also asking them, how are they feeling about this? How is their feeling about the sales process? How is their feeling about this product? How is their gut feeling about this whole situation? So the word feel should be more in the business language for us to understand and connect on a deeper level in the sales process. And then the last one is awareness of our actions. When we are busy, when we are automated, we tend to function on autopilot, and our action is the last manifestation of that autopilot. So if we're conscious and before doing something, before hitting that send button, just saying, did I put it with the right intention? Did I include the feelings? What was the motivation there? Instead of just going send, or call, then our action will be more monitored, and we're bringing that consciousness or mindfulness into our day-to-day operation. And that requires pausing, which is counterintuitive to being busy. It requires us stopping and saying, check. Let me stop for just 1 second. And that is very hard to do. If you're a busy professional, you would know it from personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting how taking a pause and being introspective right? And being curious can actually help us be better problem solvers on the outside. And it's something that we measure a lot, is your ability to read a situation. And by listening to your suggestions there, Oksana, it sounds like if folks are really get committed to practicing mindfulness, that the chances of them increasing their ability to better read the situation can certainly improve along with that. And again, emotional intelligence, it sounds like that you become more in tune with your feelings and understanding why it's happening and knowing how to act beyond that. Now, if you're thinking of my own question, I remember I had this question forever. What is the difference between meditation and mindfulness?
I look at it, and thank you so much for bringing this up. And also, I'll put a piece on emotional intelligence as well, because it seems like a different school in there, but I look at it as one of the same, in a sense of we are going all towards that connection, humanity. So mindfulness, think about it as a science, think about it as a body of research, and I look at it as the broader spectrum of things that include different tools. It includes body awareness, it includes breathing exercises, it includes self-awareness and social awareness. And meditation is a specific technique and the practice that helps you to be more mindful, in addition to other tools. Within mindfulness, there are different tools that include what's called bottom-up approach, when we are addressing the limbic system and emotions, as well as the top-down approach, which is activating our prefrontal cortex, our executive function of the brain. Meditation, and most schools of the meditation, the classic approaches that are coming from the Eastern philosophies, they're activating this top-down approach where we're activating the prefrontal cortex and where we're stimulating the executive function of the brain. So these are kind of the primary differences and definitions, without going too much deeper into explanations.
Yeah, to me, it sounds a little bit like taking the brain to the gym, right? So you can go to the gym and do pull-ups, which are going to operate help build the muscles in your arms. You can go to the gym and do squats, which are going to build up your legs, but both serve a different function for the body, right? Is that a fair way to explain that? For the folks who are listening, just to give them a few other tips as folks are walking away from listening to you talk today. And by the way, if you guys have not read it or are not familiar, Oksana has a book called Next Level You, and you can pick that up on Amazon. Where else can they find your book, Oksana?
Well, Amazon is the main distribution channel, but if you will go to our website, sattva.me, sattva.me, there's a book section that leads to the Amazon, and there is a free gift there as well that you can download.
Awesome. So as folks are thinking, okay, I'm ready to practice it right now, is there a breathing? Is there some sort of quick breathing thing that they can do, or any quick suggestion you would give to folks?
Absolutely. The easiest, and what is already everybody knows, is deep breathing. And you definitely can focus on your breathing as it goes and make the exhalation longer than the inhalation, no matter how strong you breathe. And what helps to make that inhalation much longer than the exhalation is piercing your lips like you are breathing out through a straw. So if you will exhale, it would look, and you are exhaling till you no longer can exhale. But even regular, let's say you are in a meeting and you cannot do that gesture with your face, therefore just slow, deep breathing would help, or what I call 5x5 breathing, box breathing, that many people are familiar. When you inhale on the count of 5 through the nose, you hold your breath on the count of 5, you exhale your breath through the nose on the count of 5, and then you hold your breath again on the count of 5, creating 5x5x5 square within your brain. And you can do that when it's a very subtle technique. Therefore, you can do it anywhere, anytime, driving, in a meeting, while listening to someone, or by yourself at home, to create that meditative awareness instead of the meditation, if that's not accessible for you yet.
Thank you so much. So for those who are listening or joining us on our webinar, if you hopped on a little bit late, Oksana has been talking about how to incorporate mindfulness into your world, and specifically in the sales world. Sales can be a stressful thing. It can be an up and down emotional roller coaster. And what Oksana has shared with us is just the practice of awareness, of knowing, of paying attention to what's happening. It automatically increases your own mental engagement, and you can practice deep breathing breathing, or as she mentioned, the squared breathing, the 5 by 5 by 5 in a meeting. Let's say that you recognize, hey, I'm not really in this room right now. My brain is on the fear of yesterday or the worry of dinner later on. You can, as soon as you notice and take that pause, that is a moment of mindfulness because you took a second to notice. And then you can do some breathing before you go into a sales meeting, after it's done. If you need to de-escalate from the day before you go from your car in your house, you can utilize these practices to make sure that you're staying conscious and mindful throughout your day. I think I read on a study somewhere that we spend about 95% of our day on autopilot, which is why many of us drive home after a day at work and we're like, how the heck did I get here? I don't even remember that drive home, right? We're just on autopilot. So thank you so much, Oksana. By the way, guys, Oksana and Haley and I, if you happen to be catching this live today on February 27th, we are going to be in Orlando at this Sandler Client Summit. I'm going to be speaking. Haley will be speaking. Oksana will be around. So you will recognize her face. You can go pick her brain. Will you have your books there, Oksana?
I'll take a couple with me. So
maybe you can snag a book there and really dive into this mindfulness piece. I want to pivot over to Miss Haley Haggerty, also known as Haley Aro, in, like I said, in the world of Sandler, and talk about this accountability piece. So help us from your perspective of, the expert in accountability, which, by the way, when I work with companies, this is one of the things they cite as their biggest challenge, right? Many of us, we don't have a challenge being creative. We have a challenge executing and staying committed to the things we say we're going to do. So if you were to help myself and the audience link this idea of mindfulness and accountability together, where do they intersect?
I think that's a great question. And accountability it's misunderstood. It's got kind of a bad connotation, if we're being honest, right? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that too. But I think the crossover is that, less than 2% of people, which is a really shocking statistic, at least to me, and is that less than 2% of people set personal goals. And so when there's a lack of personal goals or a personal commitment to doing something that's really crystallized and clear, then there's sort of this fallout effect from that. There's a lack of plans, and the things that we do every day are kind of random, and sales leaders struggle to hold their people accountable for the same exact reason. It's sort of, they're holding their people accountable for their reasons, but they're not really making the link to what is it their people want to achieve. And us as human beings often don't crystallize, our goals in a way that we can then have a meaningful and effective plan and action items associated with it.
Yeah, so it's the randomness versus intentionality, right? Of just being like, okay, it is so funny that folks I'm sure ladies, all of us have had a conversation with somebody when you ask them about their goals, it's like deer in the headlights. Like they're like, I've never even thought of a goal before. I, want to pay off my credit card. And I'm like, what do you mean? It is really interesting, right? So with that word accountability, because I'll throw myself out there. I used to have a really hard time with this because to me it felt like discipline, and I used to hate that word. It felt like somebody telling me what to do. So what do you find that we need to make peace with, even in the word or the language of accountability?
I think there's a lot of words that come up when you hear the word accountability. Let's face it. I think one of them is fear of failure. So if I say that I'm going to do something and then I don't, then this other big word comes up, which is guilt. And so we have failure, fear of failure, maybe even fear of success, but we also have this big thing called guilt. And that also comes with a lack of a plan, a lack of how am I going to achieve it? And that's why resolutions don't really stick, because it's something that's nice to have. It's something that's nice to do. Hey, yeah, I'll lose a few pounds. But then we never really thought about, well, what's the plan to sort of achieve that? And what do I need to do that are small wins that I can be proud of along the way, and not have this overarching sense of guilt that I think eats away at that. And you're right, discipline is hard for all of us. And, as human beings, we sort of make things harder than they are, right? We're really good at doing that, which is, making something a big goal, something that's, I'm going to crush sales this year, but what does that mean? Or, I'm going to go out and make 10 sales when I've only made one. And, but then we trap ourselves in this place of guilt, and that really kind of eats at our mind, and, certainly causes lots of things like head trash, and certainly impacts our ability to stay mindful in the moment and in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that when accountability like creeps in and we're not where we need to be, a lot of people were really good at explaining to people why it's no longer important, right? Like all of a sudden that goal is just no big deal anymore. Well, I don't really want that anymore. And truly it was, I just wasn't committed and accountable. So let me break down a little bit of what you said a moment ago, which is, hey, you can have those small wins along the way. So can you explain to us and the audience joined us today, how do you make accountability happen in baby steps? How might you break that down?
I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing, which is goals. And we spent a whole afternoon with what is it that you want to achieve. We're sitting here in December. Right now it's February, but let's fast forward to December, and what's one thing you want to achieve in your life, and make it really specific. And she said, right now I'm only spending one night a week at home eating dinner with my family, but I'd love to do 3 nights a week. And so I said, okay, well, that's great. So if you want to spend 3 nights a week at home with your family, then what are the things that you need to do in, advance of that, back it up before the dinner time comes, right? To get yourself in a place where you can do that. So that means that you're going to have to plan better. That means that your day is going to have to take, different shapes. That means that you're going to have to network. She's doing a heavy amount of networking. That might have to take place in the morning versus leaving it to the end. And we're all sort of creatures of delay, and, you're right, defend, justify, and explain, well, I'll do it later, and, I'll work out tomorrow. And we do that a lot. But if we have little wins that we can track, along the way, and make tracking actually a good thing, and not tracking results, but tracking activity, that certainly is a big differentiator.
Yeah, I love that, because I think we all do that. I'm going to start that diet Monday, and we have so much faith in our future self. We think our future self, you're like, starting Monday, I am not going to like pizza, and I'm going to love to work out, but Saturday, I am eating that stuff up, right? And that's to your point, Haley. I think I had an aha moment there, like, oh wow, that happens when we're trying to track the result, because the result is in the future. But if we're tracking the activity is in the present, which is also we have to be mindful to be able to do that. And that's how we ultimately shift to that result. So if we think about this in the sales context, because my gut says there's probably a lot of sales folks who have joined us on this call today, if you're thinking of some, I don't know if it's do's or don'ts, right? What's good accountability versus bad accountability? Or is there a certain habit that you feel like people in sales should really hold them accountable to? I'll let you decide which end of that you want to answer there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think accountability at the end of the day is doing what you said you were going to do when you were going to do it by. So as a sales professional, I think one of the things that you want to start with is, what's one specific goal that I can have, right? We just talked about that. But then how do I start planning my day and my week, and not looking further than a week out? Because we also, like I said, we love to delay, and hey, I'll get to it next month. And, if it doesn't happen today, it'll happen next week. And then we have this tumbling effect. And that's what happens. We don't do something, it adds up. And then by the time we get to the end of a quarter, maybe we haven't had the kind of success that we needed. And now all of a sudden our sales leader is coming down on us because we didn't achieve something, right? And that's where accountability has this major disconnect. So I think one of the things that would be helpful is, what's something that I can do every single day that's going to add up to big things later on? So for example, it might be, hey, I can send one email to a client that I haven't talked to in over a month. We all have clients, we all manage clients in different ways. That could be one example, right? Versus saying, I'm going to go meet with a client every week and then feel guilty about it because it's not necessarily reasonable. So
Mm-hmm.
small little things that we can be doing all the time that I think really add up to big things later on.
Yeah, so it sounds like if people are carrying around the guilt, right? If the folks listening on today's webinar think, what are the top things in my sales life that I'm feeling guilty about? And then how can I just make them simpler, right? Sort of, I love that of don't make the goal meeting with somebody, just email them. You could do that in, 5 minutes and it's over with. Just take one step back from where your accountability is. Maybe you started at step 5 and you really should have started at step 1. So
Right.
have you found that there's magic to like the commitment of it? Because I think consistency, oh my gosh, many of us are hot and heavy on our goals from January 1st
Oh, yeah.
until about January 20th, right? I was in the gym January 1st, there was not any equipment to be seen. By January 20th, there were like, treadmills galore. So what's your advice, Haley, when things start to do that downturn?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself, there's commitment and then there's involvement. And I think most of the time, if we're being honest and we're being candid, we're sort of involved in our goal. And it may not even be a goal that we can achieve. But as I define commitment, so commitment to me is the willingness to do whatever it takes, no matter what, and be held accountable by somebody that I trust, somebody that we have mutual, trust and results, whether that's a partner, a sales leader, a spouse, whatever that is, within the scope of integrity. But being involved is doing all of those things as long as it's convenient. And so I think you kind of have to ask yourself, would I do this no matter what, or am I doing this because it's convenient? And so I think that's kind of like the first place that we want to start. It's a hard question that we have to ask ourselves, but I think that's where having our true north and the goals that we want to achieve, both personally and professionally, are just so important. And I always recommend that it's the rule of 2 and 3, 2 personal goals at any given time that you can, meet, and 3 professional goals, because sometimes we make it too far in advance too. And I always try to say, let's do it in a calendar year. Because anything, beyond that can become daunting. And then that's where that, fear of failure and certainly guilt comes in.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but my future self in 2 years has everything together. Like she
Oh,
is
yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, so
It's
I
all
have
happening.
right. I have a two-parter question, but I want to start off about accountability with other people, like involving other people in your accountability. So I have a question about sales management, but then also just finding accountability buddies. So if I have those professional and personal goals, have you found, are people more successful when they invite people in? What does that process look like? Help us out there.
Right. I mean, there are many studies, and you can read about this. Harvard Business Review's done a lot of studies on inviting, others into the process in terms of our success and accountability, but our success factors go up by a significant amount if we involve someone else that we trust into the process. Now, that requires a huge amount of vulnerability, because that means that I and the other person both have to be willing to share what those goals are and what you need help from the other person to lift you up, pick you up on track, etc. So I think, that's certainly a big piece of it, and finding somebody that, you care about enough that's going to ask the hard questions too, because, we can have people that we say they want to hold us accountable, and then they don't really ask the tough questions like, hey, what happened? I thought this was important. Or, I thought going to the gym was important, but I haven't seen you all week. Hey, what's up? And being willing to understand that fear of failure and failure is just a part of our everyday existence. We're not always going to make a sale. We're not always going to be perfect. Certainly we want to. We're not always going to get to the gym, and there are going to be days where we order a pizza, but if we can also find ways to have people that can lift us up and be there for us during the good times to celebrate, but also help us by asking good questions and to remind us of what our goals are, that's a really important. Sales leaders, I think, can play that role, but they have to be willing to be vulnerable and share their own personal and professional goals with their people. And that's sort of like the big missing link in sales leadership, which is, well, what's your goal? But not me, the leader, ever sharing anything. So that's, I could talk all day on that.
Yeah. So finding that personal buddy, it's probably pretty important to find somebody who either is where you want to be or is more committed, because we all have those friends that we know if we're like, okay, we are starting on Monday, we're doing this diet thing together. And then on Wednesday, we're saying, I drank half a bottle of wine and I had a cookie. And they're like, oh, me too. Thank God. All right, well, we'll start next Monday, right? Like you want them to be on the same, you want somebody who is going to hold your feet to the fire, right? That's so funny because I think
And
we
you
all know
also
what time can be.
You're right. And you also want someone to challenge you. We can have lots of different people in our life that are certainly our supportive loved ones and, friends or family, etc. But, speaking from personal experience, my trainer at my gym, he and I have a great relationship, and he holds me more accountable in ways than other people in my life that are there to pick me up no matter what. But I know that he's going to ask me the tough questions that I need him to ask.
Now back to that sales manager thing, because I've heard this from folks before, and maybe this will be the landing question for us today on our webinar. I've heard from sales managers, but I don't want to be a micromanager, right? And so there's almost like the idea of micromanagement and accountability go hand in hand. And so it's like there's this line between negligence and micromanaging. How do you help them make sense of that from a sales manager's position?
Micromanaging comes from not knowing what your people are doing. So when people don't know what someone's doing, then they feel compelled by Friday to say, well, gee, I wonder what Amy was doing. I never saw her. I never heard from her. We never really had any check-in calls. So now I'm going to feel the need to go micromanage, to go figure out, to go find out, and ultimately do kind of what parents do, right? When there's not a lot of communication, now I got to be the bad guy. And I think what helps have a great relationship and accountability is when, like I said, both the salesperson and the sales leader come together and have a sharing about what is it that I want to achieve personally and professionally, but where they're open and candid with each other about what's the plan that I need to do every week to achieve those goals, and then what activities am I doing. And sales leader and salesperson should be very open about that. That should not necessarily be something that the salesperson is guarding or that the sales manager is wondering about. The more open, the more candid, the more that's accessible, the better conversations it will be for a sales leader to actually intervene earlier and to say, hey, I notice you're going on a lot of calls, but I'm not seeing a lot of second meetings happening. What can we do? What can I do to help you achieve that, versus waiting to the end of the month or the end of the quarter to say, well, you just didn't meet your numbers, so now we need to have a hard conversation. And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, man, I wonder, and from your experience, that's probably a top challenge for sales managers, right? Is just knowing that line of accountability. What does it look like? How do we get people to advocate for accountability for themselves so it doesn't feel like we're kind of, shaming one another? Really interesting topic here. We've got some questions that have come in from folks who are joining us today. And one of the questions is from Tyler. Haley, this one is directed for you. So what Tyler is saying is, hey, what's that balance between like accountability and actually enjoyment and having fun? So almost, I think people look at it as extremes, and that sounds like that's what Tyler's thinking is like, hey, do I have to be accountable all the time, or what's the balance look like?
I think it's a great point. I don't think there's enough celebrating going on of success along the way. And we can have a lot of fun on the way to achieving our goals. And I look at accountability as, it's got a negative connotation, but I actually look at it as a really good thing, because accountability in sales, I think most people think it's only when I get a yes. But hey, if you got a no, let's celebrate that too. Oh, you got a referral? That's great. You learned a lesson? Perfect. You drank 8 glasses of water? That's also good, because that's part of your plan. And I think having small wins that we can celebrate every single day, no matter what the result is, then that's what makes accountability enjoyable, because it's lots of mini successes, MINI successes throughout the day that I think add up to big things later on.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. One last question. This one's from Jenna. This is for you, Oksana. Jenna's question is, if I have a manager or a leader who is not necessarily accepting of me taking the time, I think is what she's asking, taking the time to meditate or be mindful at work, what can I do if I come up against that?
There are many ways to address that, and this is a very valid question. And the way the implementation of mindfulness can come in the organization, either top down, where we educate the leaders and the managers first on the benefits of these tools, or it can come bottom up, where the employees come across these resources first, and therefore they could be the ambassador and educator on the subject. So finding some articles, and luckily there's so much medical research as well as articles on Forbes and Inc. about the benefits of mindfulness and meditation in the workplace, and sharing that with managers, saying, hey, I came across this, I think it will really be a really good fit within our organization, and I happen to have my personal experience, let's say if she was practicing at home or joining some group, and say, this is what it did for me, would you be willing to explore that? And therefore she becomes that ambassador within the company, and that could come both ways.
Love it. Being mindful and advocating for your needs, right? So thank you so much, ladies, for taking the time and sharing your expertise. This has been helpful for me. I've got some good takeaways that I'm going to be able to go and put into place. And I know that the folks who have joined us have had the same. So for guys who have joined us today, ladies and gentlemen, right? Because we've got the ladies all joining in together. A couple of resources for you to check out. Sandler.com/mindfulness. You're going to find some additional resources there. And then there's also the sales accountability course, which Haley was a part of, that you can grab for $38. So if you really want to dig in on your accountability, check that out. And again, if you're watching this live, if this happens to be before, March 5th and 6th of 2020, you can come meet Oksana, Haley, and I at the Sandler Summit. Thank you, ladies, again for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Go make it a great day.